Gurur-Brahma, Gurur-Vishnu, Gurur-Devo Maheshwara, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Vedyat Ravinam Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we are still making our way through the 7th chapter, the lamp of satisfaction. And what verse are we on?
Today is 99.
99. Can you help us out, please?
Padham santi hridayasya etava shrutya nekata asambhavyat vamarthasya viparita cha bhavana. The causes of the lack of firmness in the direct knowledge of Brahman are the occurrence of apparently contradictory texts, the doubt about the possibility of such a knowledge, and radically opposed ways of thinking leading to the idea of doership.
Yes. Oh, what a marvelous verse. So, what keeps us from steady wisdom? So many of us now are at a place in our sadhana when we're here in class, the world, the ego drops away, and the no-thingness of the self, the Chidakash, or as he calls it, the Kutastha. It's very clear. But when we get into the world, we lose it. And we are plagued by doubt, and Jiva Bhavana re-arises. Now, he's given us some causes. I don't know if he's going to add another, but I'm going to say there's another cause. And that's addressed in Viveka Chudamani by Shankara. Well, he actually does address it. So let's go through each one of these. The first idea,
the occurrence of apparently contradictory texts.
Yes. So, in Gita class last night, there was a student who had gone to an ISKCON temple. He's Indian. And he was talking with one of the teachers there. I don't know if it was a Swami or not. And who said, no, the Vedanta is wrong. You are not God. God is Krishna. What we're to do is to worship Krishna. That's the Dvaita philosophy. The ISKCON people, it's a wonderful group of people. They're very nice. But this is their understanding. So the text seems contradictory. And that's only one example. There are many. So we have doubts as to what is the real nature of the teaching. Probably the most common that I get in the Vedas, we have over and over again the teaching of the transmigrating soul, the Jivatma, and what it goes through from incarnation to incarnation. And I somehow think something's going to happen to this entity called the individual me. Whereas the Upanishads thunder the doctrine of ajati. In truth, the self is never born. The feeling that I am a person is why I almost never use the term jiva, or even worse, jivatma. I will use jiva bhavana. The feeling that I'm a person. Then I ask the question, are you born into the dream? Do you incarnate into the dream? Well, it feels like it when I'm dreaming. Feels like I'm in my dream body looking at a dream world. But when you wake up, is the dreamer liberated? No, he seemed to have never existed in the first place. It was a dream. So this can be the value of a teacher. There are many teachers who will actually say, if you're going to study with me, you can't read other texts. You can only read the texts that I suggest that you read. You can't work with other teachers. You either work with me or you don't. I see the value of that. I personally don't think it's a value. You know why? You can tell a yogi, but you can't tell them much most of the time. They're going to do what they're going to do. So what I encourage people to go read all you wish, study with whom you wish, then come to me if you have doubts, and I'll see if we can straighten them out. All right, what's the second reason that people have doubts?
The doubt about the possibility of such a knowledge.
Yes. What happens is we're out there in the world, and we begin to think all this self-realization, it's superstition. None of my friends are doing this. Why am I getting involved in all this yoga shmoga? Why don't I do what they do? Go for the cash and prizes, the ambition, the drug, sex, and the rock and roll. We doubt. We doubt the veracity of the teaching. Now, here is one that Indians are plagued by much more than Westerners. In India, there is such a reverence for the Mahatma, the woman or the man of realization. We're taught to worship them. And then there's an unexamined belief, oh, that could never happen to me. I'm just an ordinary fellow. I'm going to get married, get a job, have a family. I revere the Mahatma, but no, it could never happen to me. Westerners don't have all that cultural overlay. So many of us, when we were first exposed to this, well, why not? The Indians couldn't look Swamiji in the eyes. They were too busy on their faces touching his feet. Westerners would look him right in the eyes and he'd tune us up. He loved it. It's not so much anymore. Now, the third idea.
Radically opposed ways of thinking leading to the idea of doership.
Yes. So, in Viveka Jutamani, Shankara says, even after realization of the truth, there exists a strong impression that one is the doer and the enjoyer, which is the cause for rebirth. Here it means I get identified again. And he says it needs to be conscientiously and consistently rooted out. How? Through steady and continuous identification with the self. And then at the end of that shloka, he says, it is the annihilation of the vasanas here and now that is considered liberation by the wise. What is it that causes me to re-identify? It's when that vasana gets triggered. And then Avarana Shakti, I forget who I am, Vikshepa Shakti, Jiva Bhavana arises, and I'm not yet subtle enough to see, oh, I see you. No personal sense of self is real. The doer is not me. I have no thoughts or feelings of my own. I do nothing. I am Chidakasha. Viveka. And then Vairagya. I discriminate and then I drop it. But if the Avarana Shakti has come down and we get involved with the world, with highness and minus, then that karta, that sense of I need to do something, arises. Wonderful verse. Any questions about this and what to do about it? All right, next one. Let's see if he gives us an antidote.
Shakha bhedatmaka medat shrutam karmanyatanyatha evam trapi ma shankit yata shravanamacharet. Owing to the existence of different systems, dispositions, and desires, the Shruti enjoins different kinds of sacrifices, etc., in the Karma Kanda. But about the knowledge of Brahman preached in the Upanishads, there is no scope for doubts. So practice repeated hearing, etc., about the truth for firm conviction.
So in the Karma Kanda, the ritual portion of the Vedas, all sorts of practices and ideas are enjoined. But the Upanishads are consistent. If we want moksha, liberation, doesn't mean we don't do our duty. We've got a family and they're going to go celebrate something for Holi, which was just today. Today is Holi?
Mhm.
Yeah. We can do that. But you know, it's not about someone suckling the breasts of a demon and being poisoned. It's all metaphor. It's all mystic symbolism. Stay with the simple, direct teaching of the Upanishads. And even the Upanishads will have other teaching. Those of us who are studying Krishna on Saturday mornings, we're getting lots of teaching about prana. And that is useful to understand Saguna Brahman. But in the sixth question, we'll get to Nirguna Brahman, the real essence of the Upanishad. So, again, true story. I had a student. He was a classics scholar at UC Berkeley, PhD student. And in those days, Sanskrit was not in South Asian studies, it was in the classics department. They have moved it since then. So he studied Greek, Latin, and Sanskrit. That's what he did. And he had this huge library of Sanskrit works, plays and poetry, all sorts of things, different works on different ideas of spirituality. And he was a real mumukshu, but he was very confused. And he also had AIDS. So he knew his time was short. So I said, okay, we got a deal. You tutor me in Sanskrit, and I will take you through Vivekachudamani. This text had never got done. And because he had a life-threatening illness, sannyas came very easily to him via beautiful journey we walked together. It was marvelous. He's the one that gave me Krishna. From Mars. But he had this first step. All right, next verse.
Vedantanam sheshanam adimadhyavasanatah brahmatmanyeva tatparyam iti dhi shravanam bhavet. Hearing is the process by which one becomes convinced that the Vedas in their beginning, middle, and end teach the identity of Jiva and Brahman, and this is the gist of Vedanta.
Yes. So if let me frame it a different way. In the wonderful text, Tripura Rahasyam, the whole first third of the book deals with the question, what is the root cause of liberation? Anybody remember what the answer is? Sadhu Sangha. This is all done in the story of Hemaleka and Hemachuda. So if we have the great punya, to be able to work with a teacher who themselves has traveled the path, then the dross gets knocked away pretty quickly. Now, you can read that if you want, but that's not what's important. Let's go through this. We get to the essence of the Vedanta. Vedanta Sar. Next verse.
Samanvayadhyaya etatsu dhivasthya karibhihi tarkai sambhavanarthasya dvitiyadhyaya irita. This subject is well explained by Acharya Vyasa and Shankara in the Brahma Sutras in the section treating of the correct view of the Vedic texts. The second chapter of the same classic treats of reflecting, by which one is enabled to establish the doctrine of non-duality by reasoning, which satisfies the intellect and refutes all possible objections.
So, Shravana, first is hearing. We hear the truth from the Guru. But the second practice is manana. In Vivekachudamani, again, Shankara says, who can argue for the scriptures and refute arguments against them. This is not conversations we do at cocktail parties or at somebody's birthday event. Where does the argument take place?
In our mind.
In our own mind. Real spirituality is profound common sense. Let me give you an example. Before I met Swamiji, I was introduced to the Buddha's Four Noble Truths. Noble truth number one, life is suffering. Oh, those poor people in India. Of course it's suffering. Everybody's poor. And nobody has telephones, and they have to, they live in an underdeveloped country, and in ancient times, people suffered. Of course, there was suffering. I didn't get it. I had all these white, racist, privileged ideas. I apologize to you Indians for my youth. But I did. Totally misunderstanding the depth of the Buddha's teaching. So we have to reason through it. It wasn't until I met Swamiji that he invited me to ask the question, what does it feel like to want something you don't have? Can you find any other kind of suffering? We suffer not because we don't have what we want. We suffer because we compulsively want. Oh, that's a subtle idea. But I had to reason through that to understand it. First time I went marching through Mandukya Upanishad with the Gaudapada Karika, and I got to that second chapter. Gaudapada says the phenomenal world is unreal. The proof of its unreality is you can see it. That makes no sense at all. Actually, it makes enormous sense if you really think it through. I'm not going to spend time doing it this evening. but it's a very rational conclusion. So our own logical reasoning is one of the four pramanas. We have Shruti, the scripture herself. We have Smriti, we have the recorded evidence of all the great sages through time. The fourth, my own reasoning, manana. And then finally, my own direct experience. Vedanta never asks us to believe in something that's irrational, that makes no sense. It's super rational. All right, next one.
Bahujanma Dhyabhyasa Adyehadir Yatmadhisranat Puna 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 Hrudeyatve Yevam Jagat Satyatva Dhirapi. The jiva, as a result of the firm habit of many births repeatedly, moment by moment, thinks that the body is the self and that the world is real.
So this is the experience of the person in ignorance. I think I'm my body. I think the world is real. Most importantly, things out there are inherently joy-giving and misery-producing. That's the state of the person in ignorance. That gives rise to the sense of doership. If that be the truth, then what is life about? Getting all the stuff that makes me happy and getting rid of all the stuff that makes me unhappy. What is there to think about? Except it doesn't work. Next verse.
Viparita bhavaneyam ekagrayatsa nirvate tatvopadeshat prageva bhavatyeta dupasanat. This is called erroneous thinking. It is removed by the practice of one-pointed meditation. This concentration arises out of worship of Ishvara even before the initiation regarding attributeless Brahman.
So through the worship of God, Ishvara Pranidhana, trustful surrender to God, having an Ishta Devata, we develop dharana, single pointedness of mind, which then matures into being able to meditate. The mind has to be subtle for us to practice self-inquiry. Mind is gross. You ask the question, Koam, who am I? I'm Jim, and I'm a worm. What question more do I need to know about that? That's not what he's talking about. It means this subtle discrimination between self. So karma yoga, bhakti yoga, these all purify the head and the heart, which make the deeper flights of meditation fruitful. Any thoughts on this? Those of you who have friends may have heard this constant refrain. Oh, I try to meditate and I sit for 5 minutes, but then I get antsy. It's just not for me. Oh yeah, I meditate. I listen to music when I'm riding my bike. Do you have friends who think that's what meditation is? Yeah, we don't argue. But it indicates a rajasic mind, a mind with a lot of thoughts and pressure. We have to be willing to practice karma yoga, practice trustful surrender to God, practice looking at our kleshas, our defects of character, before the mind becomes subtle enough to meditate. Any thoughts on this? All right, next verse.
उपास्तयोत्त एवात्र ब्रह्मशास्त्रेऽपि चिन्तताः प्रागनभ्यासेन पश्चात् ब्रह्मभ्यासेन तद्भवेत्. Therefore, in the books of Vedanta, many types of worship of Ishvara have been discussed. Those who have not done worship before the initiation into Brahman will have to acquire this power of concentration by the practice of meditation on Brahman.
So, I'm reminded of the story of in Tripura Rahasyam. So Parashurama, after he's been busy trying to kill all the Kshatriyas, gets beaten in battle by Ram, who spares his life. And as he's pouting over his humiliation, he comes on down the road and he meets the sage Samvarta. And I always kind of imagined the guy had a lot of Shakti, tuned him up a bit. Parashurama asks him, what's the meaning of life? Samvarta gives him the absolute truth. But Parashurama is too gross to even understand it. So Samvarta says, you know who'd be good for this kid? The Dada. Head on down the road. Talk to my friend Dada. Parashurama goes down the road to the Tatriya. The Tatriya scopes out the set of his soul, I call it. God, kid's got a mind like a brick. So he initiates him into the worship of the goddess. Very likely the Sri Vidya tradition. Him off where he does ritual worship of the goddess for 12 years until finally his mind is pure enough to start mature inquiry. Comes back to the Tatriya and he's ready for the deeper truth. Very classic story. Not all of us need 12 years of worship, of ritual before we're ready. Some of us don't come to me unless they're really ready. Notice we don't have hundreds of people in these rooms. This is not for everyone. It's for those who are ready. Next verse.
Tachintanam tatkathan manyo anyam tat prabodhanam etat eka paratvam cha brahmabhyasam vidurbudhaha. The practice of meditation on Brahman, the wise consider means reflection. Sorry. The practice of meditation on Brahman, the wise consider means reflection on it, talking about it, mutually producing logical arguments about it, thus to be fully occupied with it alone.
Yes. So, Jnana Yoga is a pramana, a means of knowledge for those people who meet the world through their intellect. Bhakti Yoga is for those people who meet the world through their emotions. Karma Yoga is for those who meet the world through their body. They just want to do stuff. But the Jnani thinks. So the Vedanta gives them a way of thinking that gets them out of their thinking. Very funny. So the ritual for purification, as he says here, is thinking about it, talking about it, having a sangha, group of fellow travelers, reading about it, discussing it with one another. Taittiriya thunders at the end. Swadhyaya pravachane. Your own self-study of the scripture. And teach this to one another. This is why Swamiji always encouraged us to establish study groups. Because the very act of trying to explain this to other people helps you root your understanding. Who here has ever had the experience where you think you understand the Vedanta very well, and then someone asks you about it, and you go, and you have difficulty explaining it? Who's had that experience? It means your thinking isn't clear. That's what it means. If your thinking is clear, it's very simple to explain. The more we read, the more we listen, the more we share, the more these ideas consume us. I love one of the things that Paramahansa Yogananda used to say. He used to say, ashrams are for weak lovers of the Lord. Most of us are weak. To enter into a community which is God-centered makes it easier. Now, Vidyaranya was the Shankaracharya of the Sringeri Mutt, which is just that. It's an ashram. It's a seminary. It's a graduate school. All these sorts of things. When young people come in and they're in community, this is what they're doing all the time. You've been there. What's a daily routine like for some young brahmachari at the Sringeri Mutt?
I think they wake up early in the morning, they do a bunch of chanting, and then some meditation, and some scripture study, service in the ashram, evening meditation, chanting, and then go to bed.
Yeah. For years. That's the easy way. Those of us who are doing sadhana while we are in the world, while we are grahastas, have a lot of yoga bala, a lot of the power of yoga. Next verse.
तमेव धीरो विज्ञाय प्रज्ञां कुर्वीत ब्रह्मणः नानुधायात् बहुच्छ्द अन्वाचो विग्लापलं हि तत्. The wise man, having known Brahman beyond doubt, ought to generate a flow of unbroken thought current on it. He should not engage in much discussion, for that has but one effect: it tires the organs of speech.
Yes. So if you are a knower of Brahman, who you are speaks much louder than anything you can say. Now, if it's your karma to be a teacher, that's one thing. But that's not necessarily what's given most of us to do. But if you are moving through the world and you are a full knower of the Supreme and your mind has retired into the Supreme, people will come to you. They will want what you have. Then it is our duty to pour out the knowledge for those who are ready. Next verse.
अन्याश्चिन्तयतो मां ये जना पर्युपासते तेषां नित्याभियुक्तानां योगक्षेमं वहाभ्यहम्. The Gita says, those who one pointedly concentrate their mind on me and meditate on me as their own self, I give what those ever devoted ones need and protect what they have.
Yes, this is the Yoga Kshemacha section that he talks about. I give them what they need and I retain for them what they have. So, what does it really mean? Your prarabdha will take care of the body. Don't worry about it. Doesn't mean not to have a job. But we want to give up ego prompted beginnings. Well, I'm going to start a new business so I could be famous, so I could be super rich, so I can impress my friends. Nonsense. Now, there's the old Sufi saying, trust God, but tether your camel. This doesn't mean that we live in an irresponsible way. Unless you're a trust fund kid or you've joined an ashram, an institution, you're probably going to have to get a job. You might as well work at something that's useful, that's contributing to the society, and that you enjoy. but don't worry. God will take care of you. I jokingly tell people, but it's not really just a joke. I live on cosmic welfare. The Lord, it just comes. Everything I need has for years. Doesn't mean I haven't worked for a living. I do. But here Vigiranya is saying is make moksha, make God consciousness what your life is about. Master Jesus said it this way: seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all the rest will be added unto you. Very, very good yoga. Now, if you take this viewpoint, well, first I want to make my $1 million. Then after that, I'm going to retire, and then I'll start yoga at that point. Anybody had thoughts like that? Know people who think about that? If you spend the next 10, 15, 20 years working in business, at the end of 20 years, you'll be a really good business person. If, on the other hand, today you God center your life and do what you can to do everything for Krishna. Again, is the cause in a different form. See what happens. Next verse.
इति श्रुति स्मृति नित्यम् आत्मन्येकाग्रतं धियः विधत्तो विपरीताया भावनायाश्रयाय हि. Thus both Shruti and Smriti enjoin constant concentration of the mind on the self to remove the erroneous conviction concerning the self and the world.
So he's summing up this discussion that yes, you can spend time in the worship of a god, but for the Vedantin, our worship can be constant attention to our sadhana. So Shankara frames it this way. In the qualifications of a fit student, he goes through the classic four: Viveka, Vairagya, Samadhi, Guna, and Mumukshutva. Then afterward, he says, others say that bhakti alone is supreme devotion. Some of us may go, oh golly, I'm not standing on the street corners chanting Hare Krishna. And then he says, the constant attempt to live up to our true nature is also considered devotion. That's being devoted to a principle. That's being devoted to a practice. So if a musician is devoted to her art, she may spend hours and hours a day practicing. It's not like she's going, violin. No. It's clear, conscious, she's just committed, and she's devoted to it. So that also is devotion. In many ways, perhaps the highest devotion. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
यद्यथा वर्तते तस्य तत्त्वं हित्वान्यथावधिः विपरीता भावना स्यात् पित्रादावरिधिर्यथा. An erroneous conviction is ignorance of the true nature of an object and taking it as the opposite of what it really is. It is like a son treating his father as an enemy.
Yes. How often does that happen? When I'm talking with other people who are mature, they have kids who are teenagers. And I say, well, you know, there's this kind of truism that when your son hits 14, your IQ drops 20 points. And when he reaches 21 or 22, your IQ starts to go up again. And when he gets married and has his first child, Papa, what do I do? All of a sudden, you're a genius. So it's interesting how a person can think that their parent rebel against them. Stupid. Now, some of us have had dysfunctional families, but that's an exception. Next idea.
आत्मा देहादिभिन्नोऽयं मिथ्यावेदं मिथ्याचेदं जगत्तयोः देहाध्यात्मत्वसत्यत्व भावना. The erroneous conviction consists in thinking the body to be the self and the world to be real, whereas the truth is that the self is different from the body and the world is unreal.
Yes. So, because of Avarana Shakti, veiling power, in the mind, I have the non-apprehension of my essential nature. Then comes the Vikshepa Shakti, the projecting power, which is, I think I'm a person. Primarily, I think I'm the body, or the body plus the subtle body. I think that's real. And I think the world of name and form out there is separate from me and also real. And the truth that I am Brahman, I think, is unreal. That is the essence of my ignorance. Again, I like the paradigm that's put forward in Yoga Vasishta. The entire problem can be reduced to three thoughts. I think I'm a person, I have a goal, and I struggle toward it. That's it. All the rest of the structure of ego and all of my suffering, samsara itself, is built on those three ideas. That's the essence of my spiritual ignorance, the wrong ideas. It tells us what's the right notion. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. I am changeless, birthless, and deathless. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Brahman alone is real. The phenomenal world is illusory. Don't get engaged. Next verse.
तत्त्वभावनया नश्येत् sato dehati riktamam atmano bhavayet tadvan mithyatvam jagato nisham. This conviction is destroyed by meditation on the real entity. An aspirant, therefore, meditates on the self as different from the body and on the unreality of the world.
So, again, I like the way in which it's presented in Yoga Vasishta. We have 3 questions. Who am I? What is this world? How has it come about? So here he's talking about the first question. Who am I? How do I discern that? Through subject-object discrimination. I'm not the body. I can know it, it's not me. I know the body. I'm not the prana. I'm not the mind, the feelings. I'm not the thoughts, the buddhi. And I'm not the karta, the agent residing in the intellect. I'm not even the Anandamaya Kosha, the bliss of deep sleep. Who am I? Chidananda Rupaham, Shivoham, Shivoham. I am bliss consciousness. Shiva, auspiciousness. And what is this world? This world comes about like a dream. In Mandukya, Gaudapada compares the dream state to the waking state to show us that you have mini Maya at night. The way in which the dream comes about inside your mind is a microcosm of how this world comes about. Same way, first is ignorance, Maya Shakti, the non-apprehension of myself as the waker. I'm sound asleep. Then Vikshepa Shakti, I create a body, I create an ego, I create a world outside and thoughts and feelings inside. All of it is just mine. It's not real. This is no different. The difference is who's doing the dream. You are the god of your dream. Ishwara, Prajapati, Brahma is dreaming. So what's the practice? Don't take it so seriously. It's all going to be okay. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. Looks like a world of name and form, but it's really all consciousness. It's all Brahman. And Brahman never leaves its Dharma. Satchidananda. Next verse.
Kim mantra japan, kim mantra japavan murti, dhyana vadvatma medadhi, janmat janni janmithyat vadhi shchatra vyavat vyavartya syadutanyatha. Question. Are the ideas of difference of the self from the body and the unreality of the world to be repeated like the recitation of a holy formula, or the meditation on the form of a deity, or by some other method?
So, very good question. I had a student who said, I feel stuck in my sadhana. A guru said I'm supposed to chant my mantra 1,008 times every morning. So is this what you do? I am Brahman, 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 I am Brahman. World is unreal, world is unreal, world is unreal, world is unreal, world is unreal. Is that going to do it? I say no. It's subtler than that. Let's see how Vidyaranya replies.
Anyatheti vijanihi drishtar tattvena bhuktavat bubhukshur japavat budhke na kaschin niyata kachit. Reply: No, there is no injunction, for the result of the process is directly perceived as every morsel of food going down the throat satisfies hunger to that extent. A hungry man cannot be subjected to any rules about the eating of food, as is done in ceremonial repetition.
So the idea here is when I eat food, I'm aware of the texture, the taste, the spiciness as I eat the food. So the invitation here is eat the mantra. I like that. If we take one of the mantras, Tattvamasi, you are. What does it mean to you? What's implied with it? Or if we take Aham Brahmasmi, means I'm not the body, means I'm not these stupid thoughts. I got all triggered. None of these thoughts are mine. They don't belong to me. Why? Aham Brahmasmi. I'm never the witness. Jim. Mind is mithya, jaga mithya, it's illusion. Drop it, Jim. Aham Brahmasmi. I am that part is Brahman. So we wrestle with these scriptural injunctions, with these mantras. We use. It should launch us on a direction of thought that brings our attention directly back to who are you? What is your essential nature? What is this world? Oh God, this is so awful. How could that person have said this to me? Oh, I'm so upset, blah, 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 blah. Now, wait a minute, Jim. That reactivity, that's just, you're identified. Drop it. It's not real. It's just the Leela. It's the play of the Lord. Let it go. Drop it. Why? Namasatyam Jaganitya. Phenomenal world isn't real. Brahman alone is real. Oh, that's where joy really is. I really want that. Neppy, neppy, Jim. Neppy, neppy. Not this. Not this. Chidananda Rupam. Remember, I am this consciousness. Tune up the mind. Oh, yes. It's not out there. So what I tried to do was talk us through the process of using the scriptural injunctions as sadhana itself. Was that useful?
Yes.
You never have thoughts like this, do you?
I always do.
No, no. Okay, that's good. Next verse.
Ashnabhi vanavashnati bhunkte va swechha yanyatha yena kena prakarena shudham pani nanishati. A hungry man, when he gets food, may eat it any way he likes, and in the absence of food, he may divert his mind to some absorbing work to allay the pain of hunger by whatever means available.
So this is how a hungry man may distract himself. But if he's got food in front of him, he eats it. Now let's see what his point is. Go to the next shloka.
Niyamena japam kuryat kritau pratyavayatah anyatha karane narthah swaravarna viparyayat. On the other hand, japa should be done according to prescribed rules, otherwise one will acquire demerit. There is a risk of running into distress if it is done irregularly by changing the letter or the pitch of tone.
I think here he's talking about these longer Vedic mantras. Om Bhadram Karne Vishnuyama Devaha. In other words, we know where the swaras are, we know how to pronounce it. You get punya if you chant the Vedic mantras for those who are engaged in Vedic ritual. I'm not sure it's applicable to most of us in the 21st century. It might be. You might been intuitively led to chant some of these longer mantras like Rudram Chamakam or Vishnu Sahasranam or Lalita Sahasranam. Any of you done any of those chants? So the idea is you do want to get the pronunciation and the swaras correct. Good news is we got YouTube. So you can chant along with an expert. Get it right. And that will distract you from your stupid mind states some of the time. Going on.
There's a note that says the risk of japa is there when it is done for some ulterior purpose and not for God.
Okay, now that's a whole nother thing. So there are people who, I'm thinking of a student, and she went to a guru, I think he was an astrologer. She wanted to get married. So he gave her a mantra to find a husband. Nothing wrong with that. But that's for some worldly purpose. I think what the connotator, the commenter is talking about is we want to always do these rituals for the purification of the mind. All right, it's 9. We'll stop here. What verse are we on for next week?
170.
170?
117. 117.
117. 117. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha.